Good afternoon, happy Thursday. I want to welcome parents, guardians, students. I think my family's joining me. I want to welcome everybody to our Thursday chat about issues that are facing families, children, and education. Um, Before I begin, I do want to make a quote. And this quote is from a man by the name of Kofi Annan. He was a Canadian diplomat who served as the 7th Secretary General of the United Nations from January 1977 to December 2006. And he was a recipient of the 2000 Nobel Peace Prize. I would like to read a quote he had. And he said, "Knowledge is power. Information is liberating. Education is the premise of progress in every society, in every family." And I think that is said quite beautifully. Before we begin our discussion today on how the COVID interruption will affect our students psychologically and socially, I would also like to speak as an educator about current situations that are now happening. This is in request to my daughter, who feels very strongly, who is another educator. And I feel that it is my responsibility as an educator to help create more fair, informed, and compassionate worlds. And what we're trying to work towards for a society of all people is a world without racism, bullying, and misrepresentation. I do want to address the fact that there's a lot going on and around us, not just from the disease, but from all aspects of people that are hurting in every different way. What I do want to say is that as educators, as parents, let's teach our children. The best way to teach is to read. There are many books out there about racism. Maybe they're concerned about the curfew. I know many of the students that I had also were worried about, why doesn't my school want me to come anymore? So please, everyone, read to your children about issues that they may be facing. Maybe they're not telling you, but maybe they're feeling it all the same. Now, I do want to throw that out because it's a contemporary issue facing all of us right now. The topic for today is basically, how did the COVID shutdown affect us all? Or how did it affect your child at whatever grade level they're in? I think the first thing we have to understand is last week, I spoke about how it affects us academically. If you think about it, it's really all connected to academics and social and psychological development that affects your child when they go to school. So one of the things, and it's not a pretty sight or a pretty statement, but one of the things that we do need to know before we talk about social and psychological aspects is that we're looking at tests, and this just came from the Brown University Institute for School Reform, that what we're going to find is that when your children return to school, and they will, we're going to see math and English, they're going to drop. Their test scores are going to drop. And it also gives us numbers. They're going to drop with anywhere from an average of 30 to 63%. We're not going to lose all skills for all students, but we do predict that the top third of students will continue to make gains in reading despite educational interruptions if they are disciplined and get educational sources that help them through the interruption. We also need to look at the fact that when your children do return to school, it's also going to be a new scenario, and it's going to be very challenging for teachers to come in. We will see some students or half students with lower achievements, but we may see a wider range of academic skills that may require the teachers to further differentiate instruction. Your child may come back a better typist, they may come back more computer savvy, and they might come back with better resources that they've never explored before because they never had to. So there are many factors that take into account things that affect children and education during shutdown. We also need to look at changes in parents' employment status, their access to food, their ability to be at home with their children, and also their ability to keep the house going in the midst of having a lot of interruptions with children at home. Okay, so with that being said, we know that they're both connected. Let's talk about the psychological and the social impact that a school closure would have on children for this period of time. There's always been school closures, by the way. There's been school closures for, there's been terrorist attack closures, there's been weather closures when there's been snow days, schools have closed for repair, there's been many different things. But this is a long one. I do have a message here. Let me address that before we go on. Okay. I got a question. My child does not say anything, but I'm not sure how we can assess the impact on them. Okay, and that's fair. Remember, reading is always an important tool. So let's try to figure out what the impact has on your child. So I think we've lost sight of who should be the center of decision-making in school closures. And they should be the children. Let's listen to the baby. The baby is your child, whether your baby be in elementary school, middle school, or high school. So when we talk about budgetary concerns and under-enrollment, and we talk about considerations that administrators are paying little attention to as far as how the school is going to be cleaned and what the new procedures are going to be, what we need to think about is the stability for the children and their psychological well-being. Because let's be honest here, I'm a parent of 4. I put 4 kids through college. Let's talk about the fact that the only way your child is going to succeed in education, despite good grades and hard discipline, is with confidence. You're not going anywhere without it. And if you don't feel confident and you don't feel comfortable in your school and you don't feel comfortable around your learning, you're not going very far, very quickly. So we have a lot of scholars that note the negative impact on academic achievement. We talk about GPAs. We talk about academic scores. We talk about attendance and student-teacher relationships. But we're talking about evidence when we want to understand how a closure or a consolidation affects the well-being of your child. But there's very little research on the psychological effects of school closures. And also, not just on your children, but how it affects the teachers and other staff members that also matter because they're teaching your children. So if we have a low morale in your teachers and administrators, it does come through in teaching your children. Okay, so psychologists have known forever that the typical responses to major life changes is going to include grief and loss. So at all these meetings and all these people talking about all these things, what we need to understand is that these impending closures have induced feelings of sadness and uncertainty. And it's a strong psychological response to major life change. And that major life change is not always visible, but it's definitely going on in your child. When I opened up my comments about the riots, and when I opened up the comments about the curfews, and all the things that are going on in our country right now, your child may be feeling it, may not be expressing it to you, but it's definitely there because they're in this world with us and they're exposed to their environment. So it's not important, or I don't think it's advisable to keep it from them. I think it's important to bring it out and talk about it so that it becomes healthy and it's something that you can work through with them. Okay, so I want to just give an example of a young lady that I worked with. I had a third grader in private practice. And one day when I had a session with her on Zoom, she was crying. And I said, why are you crying? What happened? Did you fall? Did you hurt yourself? What happened here? And she said, why don't they want me in school? Why aren't I in school? Why don't they want me to come back? Why does my teacher not see me anymore? What's wrong that I can't be in school with my friends? And I didn't know how much she knew, and I didn't know how much I should tell her, but I simply told her that sometimes our favorite places do need to close down for repairs, and we need to make them better. And that it's not a personal issue. It's more of an issue of making the school stronger so that we're safer and we can learn better. And she didn't take it personally, so I was grateful for that. I do want to talk about loss and a feeling of grief. A question I have from someone is, any ideas on what I can do as a parent to have them speak out about the situation? If they look normal, should I even bring up the topic? I'm going to answer that with reading about books and having a conversation in a non-threatening way. If a dinner hour is very hectic for you and you're not all present during that dinner hour or lunch hour, I would have towards the end of the day when you're reading with your child or you're just really comfortable with them and they're kind of calm, I would like maybe talk to them about what they know or what they think is going on and kind of bring it out in the open. It's kind of like that first discussion you have with your child about sexuality. We don't always know what they know. Sometimes they have misinformation and sometimes they have a little bit of the right information, but it's a little bit off. And you decide as a parent how much you want to share with them or how much they can handle. But you present the facts as you see it and what you want them to understand about it as they're adults. They can look normal, but they can still be definitely harboring a lot of feelings that we don't know about. So those feelings can present as being quite, they're not going to be shown, but they may come out one day, or they may come out just by crying about something that maybe you offered them something and there's no reason for them to cry, but it could be like a buildup. So in my other life, a long time ago, I was an MSW, so I did some psychological education on families and students. So I have a little bit of knowledge and I do have a master's in psychology. So this is somewhat up my alley. But even if somebody looks normal, they could harbor a lot of resentment. They can harbor a lot of grief and they can harbor a lot of feelings that unless it's brought on the table, you wouldn't know what to want to do about it. It's really hard being a parent right now to children because you don't know what they know and you don't know what you should tell them. And sometimes you don't know all the facts either. So it's a really hard time. So the pandemic actually did get worse and trying to explain this whole world to our children about why things are not the way they were a couple of months ago. Books are very helpful. They have a lot of books online that offer parents tools of how you bring up touchy subjects. So if you want to bring up a subject with a person and you decide on your age level of what you want to read, they have books about hate, they have books about racism, they have books about the virus, they have books about isolation, they have all kinds of books and they have them on different age levels from parents to parents. So you might want to read those. Any questions right now? Another question I have is, I am worried that the schools won't open in the fall and this may really impact. Absolutely. And the thing that's so very upsetting about this whole thing is this is so abnormal. We don't even know what's going to happen. And when something does happen, we don't even know the implications. So we're all kind of scrambling to do the right thing at the right time. So it's extremely hard to be a parent. It's extremely hard to be an educator. It's extremely hard to be a human being right now and know what to do at the right time because what we think is right, may not be the way that it's intended. It doesn't come off right. there is, you know, one of the things we learn about is there's no guarantees in life. And I think this is pretty much ringing true. There are no guarantees that school will open in September on time. There's no guarantee that everything's going to be online, and there's no guarantee that everything's going to be in person. It might be a mixture. What we want as far as socially and psychologically is not to make our students feel isolated or responsible for what happened. They can engage through media, and that means the Zooming and activities online and education online. And we need to embrace technology because this is the only thing right now that's really saving us. We don't have another means except our technology. So we should definitely embrace that. Another question, any ideas to keep them engaged and away from screen? Well, I think the screen is a useful tool. I'm an educator, I'm a teacher, and I'm a mother. Books are useful. Getting them to help around the house and create projects are useful. Anybody out there have a garden, make things grow, fruits and vegetables are useful. You have pets or you have a 4-H club, working with animals is useful. Doing some community service, taking care of the elderly population or the infirm population is very helpful. Getting them to virtually do a sport is helpful. And I'm going to throw this out to you. Getting them to write is useful. Getting them to write their feelings in the forms of poetry or journals is helpful. This is all helpful to get them off the screen. But the screen should not be seen as our enemy. The screen should be seen as our tool. The screen educates us. The screen informs us, and the screen entertains us. So please, the screen is not the enemy. You decide how much and when. We decide how to present it to your child, because it just may present that in September, we may be on the screen. And that would be the basis of our education for quite a while. So let's get back to social and emotional impact. Okay. We've displaced our children from their classrooms. We've displaced the children from their friends and their teachers and anybody that they related to outside the home. So what I also want to say, a majority of these students that come from tight-knit communities, many are economically disadvantaged. So not only did we displace them from their schools, but for children of disadvantaged means, we've displaced them from their food. They get free food or they get subsidized food from their school. We've taken away their breakfast and lunches. They don't have that anymore, which is subsidized by the state. We've taken away perhaps the only stability that they have with a teacher, their only basis of learning, because when you put them right back in the house, they may not have internet or computers at home. So these same students without internet and computers are spending the same amount of time that they'd be in school without any education at all. Their skills are plummeting fast. So we're really becoming a disservice to our children. So basically, children that are separated from friends and a significant, both physical and psychological community, which is their school and their learning, we have taken away their stability. And we don't even know when we're going to be giving it back or how we're going to be giving it back. So even though we try to provide better learning environments, as we are now, and we try to inspire academic opportunities for all students by offering all kinds of online learning opportunities, it disrupts children's place of safety and stability when they're not in their school. We're not mentioning when we have to do shutdowns, when we've got evil and horrible people out there hurting our children by going on their campuses, which also disrupts their schedules. What we've done is, which also stops their learning, we're talking about shutdown. There's no more school. And there have been so far no meaningful attempts to mitigate the psychological trauma of school closures that risk leaving children, especially minority children, and those in really deprived neighborhoods, extremely vulnerable, extremely vulnerable. We have taken away their lives. So if we're going to put together another school system, whether it be online, and we should embrace online learning, it's not the enemy. If we want to reimagine, reinvest in our children and reinvent, we have to get to the core and reinvent in students' mental health and well-being, okay? This reinvention would promote a school strategy that does not harm the students that it serves and addresses the mistreatment experienced by students in certain areas where they don't get enough instruction. They've lost their foods and they've lost their ability to thrive. Okay, we never want to hurt students, but we also need to speak to our administrators and district leaders that we need to recognize the unintended consequences of a well-intended proposal. We want to stop the school. We want to clean it out, make it safe, make it sterile, make the teachers come back invigorated. But instead of a comprehensive, holistic approach to school, change has to take place within each child's well-being at the very core, from within each child and within each family. And decades of research highlight that school closures and the negative effect of academics and community hurt your child, not just academically, but psychologically and socially. So I just want to state that psychology, and what is psychology? Psychology is the science of the mind with subsequent behavior. So to light up and understand the psychological harm inflicted on children in response to such a major life change, we need to put students at the center of the circle. We need to put what we want on the side. We need to put what the administrators want on the side. We need to put the children and what they want and what they need in the center and build our proposals around them. I say, listen to the baby, no matter how old that baby is. Listen to their voice and give them their school any way that they can get it so that they too can be empowered. Do I have any questions or comments? If not, I want to say, I hope I addressed some concerns. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of answers. I do have a lot of passion for what I do. I teach kids English. I teach kids writing. I believe in a better world. I believe in a world full of knowledge, and I believe knowledge is power. And I will do everything I can as an educator to reach out to each and every child I can to make them the best they can be. Thank you for listening. I'll see everybody next Thursday at 5. Have a good day.